Hello, welcome to Eat Sleep Code, the official Telerik podcast. I'm your host, Ed Charbeneau, and with me today is my good friend, John Bristowe. We got some Microsoft stories in the queue here. We've got improving the syntax highlighting of JavaScript in Visual Studio.
Yes. Yeah, so they just published this article. This is talking about Visual Studio 17.6, introducing a bunch of improved colorization and features in terms of JavaScript syntax highlighting. Syntax highlighting obviously is the probably the main reason why you use, well, one of the main reasons why you use an IDE to begin with. And so this post goes through some of the changes that have been recently made. So things like control keywords are now mapped. Types are mapped to what's called a type display item, so you can distinguish them from HTML tags. Variables are better mapped using another type as well. Escape characters can be mapped as well if you wish. So basically, if you're looking at improving the readability of your JavaScript in VS, this update with 17.6 should help with that. You can also personalize these, of course. You can go through the fonts and color settings inside of VS and change these to your like. And so they've added basically a whole bunch of new display items there that you can use as part of this update.
Nice. Speaking of Visual Studio, did you see there was a Visual Studio Code Day?
Yes.
So I missed out on this. It was actually yesterday for some reason. I guess being away from the office, I missed out on some of the announcements for this. But yeah, they had an entire day dedicated to Visual Studio Code yesterday. I'm sure these will be replayed up at learn.microsoft. Is it learn.microsoft?
They're also available on YouTube as well.
Yeah, yep. They syndicate over to YouTube as well. Oh, here we go. So watch videos you can click on. Yeah, there you go. So if you click on watch videos on the right-hand side of this, if you just Google VS Code Day 2023, it'll come up, and you can jump on all the videos there. But it's a nice post by a good friend of ours, Burke Holland.
Yes.
Then we have a full lineup of sessions here that you can check out and see what's the latest and greatest in Visual Studio Code. Watch all the videos on YouTube. So it's nice to have a day dedicated to one of your favorite tools where you can go find all the new stuff. So
yeah, this isn't the first time they've done it, of course. They've hosted code days before. They just get a whole gaggle, I guess, if you want. What would you call it? You know how they have like a murder is a group of crows, or like a gaggle is a group of geese. Like, what do you call a group of developers? Like, you know, like a feature team? I don't know. But they got a gaggle. Yeah, I know. They got a gaggle of developers and PMs on a call. And they went through a whole bunch of new features, which was awesome.
I think the official plural for nerds is herd. A herd of nerds.
Yes.
Nerd herd.
Nerd herd. I like it.
Yeah.
A herd.
Yeah, we're like somebody said one day that they fed a crow and it like made friends with them and followed them around everywhere after they fed it. And I wondered if that makes you an accessory to a murder.
Oh God! All right, Ed, it's a bit early for that, please. Okay.
I'm just curious.
I'm not.
Okay. We'll move on. Announcing .NET 8 Preview 3, and this also includes ASP.NET Core.
Yes. Yes, this came out a while back, but still relevant because we haven't actually had a show for a couple of weeks. So,
a while back.
Yes.
16 days ago.
Yes. Yeah, Preview 3, they've had 1 and 2 and now 3, and they're just iterating quickly. To remind folks, .NET 8 is due in November. But this is basically the marching that you'll hear is the .NET team is moving towards this, and a ton of stuff to go through. So too much, obviously. You could dedicate a whole show to this.
Yeah,
but yeah, lots of stuff going in.
Yeah, and I've been watching these pretty close, and this was pretty hot topic at the MVP summit, but due to NDA, you know, like we don't know exactly what we're supposed to talk about there, but make sure you check out the .NET 8 preview, but also the ASP.NET Core preview as well, because there's a lot of new things going on there too, like ASP.NET Core support for native AOT. So that's going to help your startup and bundle size of your ASP.NET Core applications. server-side rendering, improvements in Blazor, section support in Blazor. This is like something that I touched on a couple weeks ago. I said if you watch the GitHub repos, you can find some of these pieces of work being done, and you don't necessarily have to rely on the blog posts. You can kind of snoop on the activity there.
No, I get it.
But if you look at the startup time and app size of these native AOT ASP.NET Core apps, I look at the speed increase in startup time. 34 milliseconds versus 169, and then the app size is actually a lot smaller as well. Hopefully this can get brought to Blazor eventually, so we can speed up our support or app startup time for Blazor as well. But currently not supported, and that's, I believe, a browser capability that we're waiting for that to happen. So not quite supported yet, but maybe in the future, John.
Another feature that I read about with .NET 8 preview 2, 3, etc. was with containerization of apps, specifically non-root users for .NET-based containers. So the idea is that by limiting the scope, the user scope, there's a new user type that they have now that limits the amount of what you can do within this context of a container. So it's trying to basically restrict permissions, etc. So non-root user now running as part of that.
Yeah, and that WASI containerized .NET inside of a .NET, I think, is still experimental, but part of a .NET 8 initiative. All right, John, let's move on to a little bit of AI. We've got some interesting AI topics.
I've heard of it.
You shared a article called, or a website called Find, like with PH.
Yes.
A search engine, AI search engine for developers. What are we searching for with this AI search engine?
Well, there's some examples you can see at the bottom there, but basically this is utilizing the GPT APIs to help conduct queries that probably are more relevant for you as a developer. One of the common challenges we have with using search engines like Google is the fact that when you're looking for an answer to something, the answer that you get kind of sucks. Like you have to click a bunch of links, and then you go to forums where people are like, I've had this problem too, and they don't really answer the question. So Find is a developer-oriented sort of search engine based with GPT as part of its underpinnings. So you can ask questions, and it will give you links on the right and a description in the middle, etc. And you can attune the knobs and switches at the top there if you wish.
Yeah, I shared something similar to this with the Bing search engine. There's like a chat feature in it. Seeing it stripped away from the other portion of the search engine, though, makes me start to question some things. So if this is our main feed of information here, which has been generated from the sources here, this brings a level of difficulty in as a content creator. How does one get rewarded for generating content these days?
This is a discussion that's coming up right now. So there's Reddit has basically brought this up, saying that unless you pay us, you can't use us as part of your generative abilities. So stop crawling us, so to speak. Yeah, I mean, this came up when Google first launched, right? This is the whole debate that came up. Like you can't do this, but. And I think Google got into it with the newspapers, the news agencies. Yeah. God, how old am I? Newspapers. Who reads those anymore? But various news sites were complaining that Google was crawling their content and basically repurposing it. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
RSS feeds really got like a bad rap because they were essentially just taking the information and just repackaging it and displaying it on the screen. So eventually, I think people got wise to how to deal with that. And what you really want is people clicking on these links and going directly to the articles. But the problem with a generative AI resource like this is it's poached various pieces of all of these documents and then kind of put them in a blender and regurgitated them into a brand new piece without anybody having a need to click through to anything else.
Yep.
So I think we're going to see a huge backlash because, it's kind of like a chicken and egg thing. If it's not worth your time and effort to generate these resources anymore, then it eventually starves the AI of new information to answer questions with, and then you're left with nothing. Nothing but old content, I suppose. So, yeah, it's like what do you call that? Where the infection kills the host.
Yes.
Yeah, that's gonna be a topic for discussion for quite a while.
Yep.
I wanted to grab some more AI stuff. I'm a little bit out of sorts here because I was in a hurry. There we go.
It's fine.
ChatGPT. Actually, let's grab this one first because the other one segues a little bit into security. This is more of a fun, scary, fun article.
Sure, why not?
So this one comes via Twitter. Somebody took ChatGPT and hacked it into
a Furby, yes.
A Furby Face.
Yes.
And then put a voice behind it. It happens to be a British voice. I don't know why. Maybe it's a British developer that did it. But as an American, seeing a British voice on a Furby is strange enough. And then it's talking through generative text. So you can ask it questions.
Yep. Yeah, so it basically talks about how its cute and cuddly face will be a facade on top of its ultimate plan, which is to control the human race.
Yeah, this is meet your new overlord, folks.
Yep, that's right.
It was funny when these first came out, John. I don't know if you remember this. In the 80s, these Furbies came out. It was 90s, I guess. It was mid-90s. Mid-90s, these Furbies came out. They're very, very limited tech-wise. Like, we didn't have the IoT-style electronics and stuff that we have now. Back then, obviously. It wasn't internet connected. It has no real intelligence in it. But it had like this algorithm in it to where you reset the device or you got it factory default, it would pretend to learn. So like it basically, the more you played with it, the more it would unlock predetermined phrases and things.
Okay.
People severely misunderstood the tech and thought it was like actually learning stuff. And these things were banned from US government buildings because they were worried that somebody was going to bring a Furby into work and it was going to like learn like a parrot, like sitting in the corner, like understanding what these people are talking about. And then you take it back home or outside the facility and it starts like parroting things that it heard at work. So I just thought that was pretty funny. We've kind of come a little bit full circle now where it's actually capable of doing something like that. But back then, not so much. So, yeah, we had one of these. Did you have one of these, John?
No, but I had friends who had like the Teddy Ruxpin and other animatronics like that. My biggest concern about all of this is that all this junk ends up in the bottom of the ocean. So, when the aliens eventually land on Earth and they figure out what the hell happened, they're just going to see piles and piles of Teddy Ruxpin, Furby dolls, Tamagotchis, and all these various other devices that they thought. They'll be like, "Can you believe that these guys thought this was AI?"
There's a comedian, I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was George Carlin, somebody like that. Said there's going to be an archaeologist digging up Disney someday.
Yep.
And thinking we worshipped like Mickey Mouse as a god.
I know.
We had one of these in the late 90s, whatever it was. And my daughter was probably like 2 or 3 at the time. And kids are rough on stuff, right? So she's like choke slamming this thing just because kids being kids. So eventually like something got damaged in it. And we were sitting there one night and it just started like speaking in tongues and then like smelling of burnt wire. And it creeped us out. So we took it and like stuck it outside on the porch so it didn't burn the house down in the middle of the night.
There is, I hesitate to mention this, but I don't know why I find this so funny. there's a subreddit called Low Battery Sounds, and it is the funniest stuff. You can mentally search and replace that word with another word. It is the funniest stuff you would ever see. I don't know why I find low battery devices so funny, like just machines struggling to try. I think it's because I reject this idea of anamorphizing machines with humans, and like, stop trying to be something you're not. You're just a bunch of circuits, and that when they hit low battery and they struggle, it's the funniest thing to me. I don't know why I find it so funny. So anyway, there's a subreddit called Low Battery Sounds, or yeah, that's it.
If you see me making a really weird face, I muted a sneeze. Nothing like a sneeze out of context. It look really bizarre. With no sound, you look really crazy. I have to check that out. We used to have a blast with just the voice generation stuff, like the old stuff, because it sounded ridiculous. Like, now voice generation's decent. We had this thing called, like, I think it was like Dr. Spetsu or something like that.
Okay.
Just like the browser API that lets you, like, you feed it text and it'll speak. It's like just really campy and, like, just corny sounding unhuman robot voice. And we used to, like, just feed that thing all sorts of goofy stuff to say. So I would probably get a kick out of the low battery thing. So speaking of security, remember, I was talking about like the Furby debacle back in the 90s. So we're actually hitting a real world scenario here with the AI stuff. It's kind of similar in some ways. So I don't know if you saw this one. This was early this month. Some folks working over at Samsung were working on some source code, and they fed it their proprietary, it being ChatGPT, their proprietary source code to get the chatbot to help troubleshoot some like refactoring or something like that.
It's not just Samsung.
Yeah, and it started to then leak this information. So they tried to put a cap on that leak the best they could, but we've been getting notifications here to be very careful as to what we feed ChatGPT. Let's not put anything IP, intellectual property, into it, as it might find its way into other people's answers.
Yep, this is like feeding your what is it, the Mogwai after midnight. You don't want them turning into gremlins, or using another old analogy, Little Shop of Horrors, right? So you got to be careful about what you feed this thing.
Absolutely. Speaking of security, John, you posted a Google security blog announcing deps.dev API.
Yeah, so deps.dev is a website where Google has basically provided basically dependency data. This goes into a whole discussion around software bill of materials, or SBOMs, and now there's an API available for this. So this is really useful for system integrations, for app developers who are looking to get dependency data relating to how software was built. So this is dependency data and supply chains and bill of materials and all this stuff is really, really important, especially when you take into account that the White House has published a bunch of memos and requirements from the federal government in the US requiring to be able to trace back, like, how did this software become what it is? We need to have transparency. We need to be able to drill back into this. So by necessity, legislation will either drive us to this, or by, other necessity reasons, like, how did this happen? Meaning, how did this exploit happen? Being able to trace that back. Securing your supply chains is super important. As you may have heard, historically, there have been a lot of exploits done in this. SolarWinds comes to mind, probably the most recent notable example. And so deps.dev is the website, and this is an API that you can now use, and that's what this blog post goes into.
Nice. Storybook, shifting gears a little bit. Storybook's an interesting tool that helps with, like, UI development. Looks like we're up to 7.0 now.
Yeah, so if you're a component developer or you're interested in using components, Storybook's a great tool for doing this. It basically provides an environment where you can basically kick the tires for individual components from a library. There's a lot of ways in which you can do this, and there's a Kenda UI for React Storybook that you can use as well if you're so inclined. Basically, it's hard to see sometimes how components work in basically in situ or in a siloed environment, and Storybook provides that environment. You can think of Storybook as like a kind of like a petri dish where you can individually inspect components and then kick the tires by tweaking settings, by seeing the events, etc., without having to stand up a page where it's all pre-configured, basically. So Storybook provides that environment, and then it allows you to see individual components very nicely. So Storybook 7 is now available, offers a lot of great features, and there's a number of storybooks that have been published by a number of different companies. But the idea is that if you're interested in looking at components on an individual basis, this is a great tool for doing that.
You've got light mode and dark mode, support for all the latest like micro frameworks like Svelte and so on. Nice, very cool. Yeah, this helps a lot of our folks. Like you said, we've got like a Kendo UI version, or not version, but usage of Storybook. Good stuff.
Yeah, so if you're a component developer, you can build this yourself. You can build a Storybook, or if you're a consumer, you can use Storybook if someone has published the Storybook to see, hey, how does this component work?
Wow, I can't believe it's this old. Since 2016.
Yep.
And then they've been supporting some of these newer frameworks like as soon as they come out. And then I missed a security article here as well. Why is OAuth still hard in 2023?
Yes.
Security's hard? Is that a good summary?
Well, it's more than just that. It's the fact that there are so many different ways that, I mean, OAuth is in general is sort of like a standard that provides a context around how you do authentication in a generalized way. And OIDC tried to help with this, but OAuth as a standard, everyone implements it a slightly different way. And if you're looking to implement it, it's really, really tricky. This is why you're seeing prevalence of solutions that are out there that make this turnkey. But this article goes into all the reasons why OAuth is still difficult. And it is. I mean, it is hard, especially if you don't have a system that lends itself well to implementing OAuth. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things you have to learn about scopes. You have to learn about different ways in which you can validate between parties. It's a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. And thankfully there are tools and processes involved that you can use. I recently interviewed Alan Shreve of ngrok, and we talked about this.
Nice tool.
Yep, ngrok's a great tool. So that interview is up on our YouTube channel from Octopus Deploy, and we talked in detail about this. He mentioned a site that they had created called webhooks.fyi, which is a site you can go and see differences between basically how all this stuff kind of hangs together. But it all ties into this generalized story about OAuth being difficult. And it is. I mean, it's very difficult. And it sucks too, because you're like, I just want to get on with my life and I have a feature set that I have to implement. And why am I stuck in the bowels of security? Like, this isn't fun. So, I mean, this is an example here. You see the picture of the Salesforce authentication code OAuth flow. I mean, it's like 10 steps. And if you've implemented OAuth with Jira, or you've implemented OAuth with GitHub, or you've implemented OAuth with Google or with Microsoft, or it's all this same sort of back and forth, do it this way. Oh, no, that's different. We do it this way. Like, it's just a nightmare, So I don't like it. I wish it was easier.
I had to write a middleware for doing OAuth with a proprietary system that we had that was using, what was that defunct Microsoft social media thing that they rolled into Teams?
Clippy?
No. Remember they had their own like social media platform thing that got kicked to the curb? What was that thing called?
Windows 7 launch party? I'm not going to help you, Ed. I'm just going to make fun.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I wish somebody.
The Brown Zune.
Because it was just like Facebook, but it was it was made for like enterprise. What was that thing called?
SharePoint.
No, they went outside of SharePoint for this.
You realize I'm trolling.
But it kind of ended up coming back into Teams and SharePoint. So your trolling's coming full circle on me.
Okay.
Oh, dang, what was that thing called? Oh my gosh. But yeah, people they try to get people from work on this thing, and like social media and the workplace just doesn't kind of work because I don't know reasons. I think one of the reasons we go to social media to not work. And being involved in something social media at work makes you look unproductive if you're like constantly posting something on this social platform. But anyway, I had to roll an OAuth for that because that happened to be the best way we could integrate authentication was through that platform. But Microsoft, being Microsoft, didn't have a middleware provider for ASP.NET Core.
Of course.
Or ASP.NET, I mean.
Yeah, of course.
Core wasn't around yet. But I had to write my own. And just following with this this chain of operations here was just a nightmare, trying to figure out, you know, where all the handshakes take place. So in your middleware, you know, you were doing various, you know, callbacks into these handshakes. So you'd pass something to the server, it would do some authentication, pass you back your client, what do you call it? Basically all of your metadata about that client and so on. And then you'd have to see if they were authenticated into roles and the whole 9 yards, and then finally let the user see something or not. But
yeah, OAuth, the best analogy I can come up with OAuth, I think a missed opportunity for this blog post. Robin, if you're happen to listen, I doubt that you are, but a better picture for this article would have been, you know, when you see world leaders announce a trade deal and they all try and shake hands at the same time and it's super awkward and they're all like fumbling with each other's hands, etc. That's what this is. That's why it sucks.
Yeah, it was so annoying to work with.
Sure.
And I knew somebody else would probably have to do the same type of work, so I wrote an article about it. So creating custom OAuth middleware for MVC5. So yeah, that's the article that does all of the things that I just said.
The first step in being successful with OAuth is to kill that part of your soul that isn't dead yet.
Yeah, there's the same graphic, just from my perspective. Like
Wonderful.
You had to interact with all of these different points to make the application work and know what each of these events did before you could get your OAuth provider.
Token. Yes. Ultimately, what you're looking for is a token of some kind that will vouch for you and that you can access resources on the other side. Yep. I realize that this is, kind of a bastardization of what we're describing. I've implemented this myself. I've seen others implement it. We have code that does this. I get it. It's once you understand it, okay, it's not so hard, but it still is kind of sucky. Like, I don't like having to do this.
Yeah, it's nice to know nothing's changed in almost 10 years. Look at the date on this article, 2014. It's almost been 10 years.
I know.
And literally nothing has changed. It's probably gotten harder.
Yeah, if anything, Ed, using that old analogy from earlier on, when people are watching this show out on a burnt out TV with a candle inside, OAuth will continue to be a problem. So.
And I was hopelessly looking in here to see if I could find the name of the platform I was trying to authenticate against. And it's not here. I wrote it generic.
Why would it be? Yeah, of course.
Writing it about the specific platform. I love how it's a 3 out of 5 stars for no apparent reason. People are still looking at this 8 months ago.
Yep.
Yeah. It's not my fault that OAuth sucks, folks. Please don't downvote my article because OAuth is garbage. Not on me. It's not on me. Because in 2023, we're still fighting this uphill battle.
Mm-hmm.
Semaphore, GitHub. I had no segue for this, John.
Why would there be?
What are we doing?
We're typing with Interpretive Dance. So this engineer has decided, enough of me sitting all the time. Stand-up desks are for wimps. I'm going to type using Interpretive Dance. And so what he decided to do was post a camera at himself and use basic various gestures to input textual commands to his computer. So there you go.
Yeah.
What is wrong, Ed? How can you not see the potential of this?
The outfit is killing me.
Oh, of course.
So I have a friend that used to do some stuff with the Kinect. That was pretty cool. They were doing like not a serious authentication, but they were showing like a prototype of like how you could authenticate somebody based on like their like bone structure and stuff. And this was quite a while ago because, you know, Kinect has kind of moved on to the IoT Edge universe of Microsoft. It's not part of the gaming ecosystem anymore. But
we'll be joining the Furby. Yeah, Kinect devices will be joining the Furbies at the bottom of the ocean. So
yeah, he was doing some really cool stuff with his Kinect though, when it was a device you could buy for your Xbox for like $200 or whatever it was. And stuff.
I have one in this bookshelf right behind me.
It's a very expensive device these days. I think they added a lot more detail in the tracking and stuff it can do and made it for enterprise instead. Yammer. I finally found it. Yammer was the stupid platform that I was working with. I had to Google it, but it was Yammer. Speaking of Yammer,
nice.
We have a GitHub README file on what to do when you get laid off.
Yes. So obviously this is a sad reality of today's environment. We're seeing a lot of layoffs, especially in tech. And when it happens, you know, your head's swimming and it's hard to get your head straight. And, you know, knowing that something could happen and being prepared doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it's always best to be prepared. And so this is a run book that was published to GitHub where this is what you should do in the event that you suspect you'll be laid off or have been laid off. And I like these. I like this for no other reason than it's layoffs are super traumatic. They're hard to process. They're soul crushing in some ways, but it's better that you deal with them earlier, meaning you start the process of getting on with the job of, you know, potentially finding a new role, etc. And so this run book will help you do that. Yeah,
it's a nice resource. I never thought about like somebody actually publishing something on this topic, and it's especially if you don't expect it. Like you might, you know. I mean, now that you've heard about this, you can at least go grab it and prepare. But if if this is something that hit you out of the blue in the last couple days, I mean, this is a really nice thing to have.
It's always important to be prepared. So, and it can hit you out of the blue. It's happened to all of us. I'm sure all of us have been, you know, we've all been denied something. So we know how horrible that feels. Yeah. And then now being denied your means of accruing an income. You know, this is something like you don't necessarily have to go directly to a job search. It just might be a good opportunity, depending upon your severance, et cetera, to maybe start a business, et cetera. It can be argued that some of the most successful businesses ever started always are started in the midst of a recession. And because when you grow out of it as an economy, out of a recession, and you've started a business, it's nothing but you know, downhill skiing from there. That's not to say it's not easy, but it's easier on an upswing. So,
yep, definitely. On to some shameless plugs here.
This isn't shameless. I love this. This was something I was looking forward to.
Introduction to gRPC with Fiddler Everywhere. This is something that just came to Fiddler. Is gRPC or It says Google remote procedure call, but I think that's actually not correct. Right? I thought G standard for something else. It is technically a Google thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought the acronym.
Yeah, it's just RPC. It's just general RPC, but it's a style that was created by Google, and it's been around for a while. But the reason why I was looking forward to this was because gRPC is something that's used quite heavily in a lot of different technologies, and now that Fiddler Everywhere supports it, you can now trace into this, and that makes it awesome. Like, I think anything that gives me observability or being able to see something occur in a tool like Fiddler Everywhere is great, because Fiddler Everywhere is part of my tool set. And if you're not using something to sniff the wire while you're doing networked applications, you really owe it to yourself to use something, anything. It doesn't matter. Fiddler is a great tool. I use Fiddler Everywhere. There's tools like Charles Proxy. There's Postman. There's all kinds of different Wireshark if you're so inclined. There's so many tools out there, and so gRPC support is a welcome addition to the list of features to Fiddler Everywhere.
Yeah, stand corrected. I guess G is for Google.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was something else because it's lowercase g. But yeah, we've got gRPC integration. We've also got what do you call it? In a similar fashion, WebSocket integration. So you can inspect WebSockets. There's some decoding in there, so you can try to decode some of those messages. They're pretty cryptic, though. They're not always a lot of intelligence in them because they're binary. So a lot of stuff gets kind of shaken out of those, but you can somewhat tell what's in them most times. It's probably hard to see this. I wonder if it'll let me open this up in a bigger view. But they come across like this. The gRPC and the WebSocket traffic both look like this. But you can see this one's got a little bit of text in it.
Yeah, it's a binary protocol typically based on protocol buffers, and but it's highly performance, internet friendly. This is why people use it, but it's a welcome addition to the feature set of Fiddler Everywhere, which also includes HTTP2. There's a bunch of other features that I use inside of it. And another shameless plug, I interviewed Eric Lawrence on my show, Inside DevOps, where we talked about Fiddler, and we talked about a bunch of stuff there. So
yeah, Fiddler is a great tool. If you get a chance, download it, check it out. Let us know what you think. And then we've got a post here from Octopus Deploy live.
Yeah, I thought I'd throw this in. So this is something that's quite exciting for us. One of the things that we're building out right now, and we've added support for, is for Kubernetes deployments. So as you are aware, when you deploy to Kubernetes, it's not just next finish, sort of thing. Deployment via Kubernetes is difficult because there's a lot of parts and pieces. You have to define egress rules, ingress rules. You have to define clusters. You have to define all sorts of things that define basically your Kubernetes deployments, pod setups, etc., security rules, etc. And so one of the things that we've added support for recently, and more customers will see this is a blog post that highlights these features, is what we're generically calling Kubernetes object status updates. So when you do a deployment now with Octopus, you'll see these status updates come through the tool, and as part of a deployment, which is awesome because tracking this stuff can be difficult. So if you're looking at for deployments, this is something that we support. But yeah, totally a shameless plug, but I thought it was cool.
Looks like there's a nice template library there.
Yeah. We have a variety of step templates that you can use. It's just it just plugs in. But when you go to do the deployment, which is that last graphic at the bottom there, you see the updates occur in the deployment itself.
Yeah, it's a pretty nice looking app. It looks like it's got that Google material theme, or maybe the Microsoft, what was it called? Fluent UI look to it.
This is our UI. This is object. This is basically Octopus. This is our Octopus UI. When you create a deployment, you create releases, you define your deployment process. This is what it shows you. This is all underpinned by our API as well. So every operation you do is an API call. So some folks utilize Octopus using just our tool set, like our CLI and APIs. Others use the UI. It is an environment that you'll use to set up, and then afterwards, it's kind of like GitHub Actions. They just fire off, and you don't notice them. But it's a really nice capability being able to do automated deployments. So
yeah, it looks good. All right, John. I think that's all we've got for today. But
awesome.
Thanks again for joining me. And next week I will be at Stir Trek in Columbus, Ohio. So we will not have a show again next week. Sorry about that again. Sorry for the delays in getting out content. But I keep traveling, and we have family things that we've been working on. So shows will be somewhat intermittent until the end of next month. But we'll get on here as much as we possibly can. We will talk to you soon. See you.
All right.